a few years ago, I was at the gym and I was doing muscle-ups. And this is how I basically ended up picking up a chick. So I'm sitting in this gym. It was the YMCA too, which is funny. Excuse me. It was the YMCA. I'm doing my exercise, and I had a family membership, so I'm like, screw this, I'm going there anytime. Go to a different gym. Now, but back then, I'm like, screw it, let's use it. So I do my muscle-ups there on the pull-up bars. As I'm doing my muscle-ups, there's a chick that, like, there's a fat chick and a non-fat chick. And bro, I'm telling you, the hot chicks, they're always hiding, bro. They're always hiding behind the non-fat chicks. Like, I swear, that's a... Now, again, no offense, I'm just being honest. Sometimes, like, David Goggins said this. You might be saying, oh, no, you're just a little big. Nah, sometimes you might be just fat. Maybe it will stimulate that fat chick to, like... Well, she was at the gym, right? But she, like... Okay, anyway. I'm at the muscle-ups. I'm doing my muscle-ups. As I'm doing it, I heard somebody say with this little voice, they're like, hey, do you like monkey bars? I said, what the hell is this? So I fly down from my monkey bars like an eagle, like, no! And as I land, I look around. I see this pretty elegant, cute little, not little, but a cute blonde girl who I will name Camilla. Let's say that. Her name was Camilla. And I didn't know that at the time, so I say, well, yes, of course I do like monkey bars, do you? She's like, yep. And then she left. And then as I'm doing my stuff, I'm like, what the hell was that? That made no sense. So what happens then is I start doing my machines, and I notice out of the corner of my eye, she keeps looking at me sometimes. There's a fat chick, and there's Camilla. Then they start doing some funny ass stuff at the gym, And I'm like, bro, maybe I should go and pick her up, like get her number. But then I'm like, nah, like, well, bro, I'm at the gym, I'm not a big fan of picking up chicks at the gym because it's just such a weird, and it changes your whole, like, perception of the gym, if it makes sense. And I'm like, screw it, like, okay, fine, I'm gonna go, like, should I do it, should I not? Should I do it, should I not? And I'm like, okay, fine, I'll do it. If the right moment arises. So as I'm finishing my workout, I'm strolling past the lockers. And I'm like, bro, but this is also the YMCA, like, what the hell is this? And I'm like, okay, fine, just for practice, let me do this. And I was late too, like I had to go to sleep, I had stuff, I think the next day I was busy as tits, bro. But what happens is, as I'm walking over, she's sitting at a table, and I just get so nervous for some reason. And I'm like, screw it, so I'm getting in the little bar behind the YMCA, they have this coffee counter, maybe you know what it is. So I'm in there, little coffee counter, I don't even drink coffee. And I'm like trying to pour some coffee, pretending like I'm doing something. It's so funny. So I'm trying to pretend like I'm doing some coffee. Then I'm like, what am I gonna say? What is my pickup line? So in the end, I didn't come up with anything more creative than just stopping by and saying like, hey, do you play volleyball for the school I was in at that time? And she was like, no. And then I sparked the conversation. I'm like, well, I swear I've seen you. It's like, no. And then from there on, it rolled on. So it was kind of a very, very not decent pickup line. Could have done way better. But what's funny is, as I were talking, she offers me to take her number. Not me. I didn't even get to the point. Like, I was confused. I'm like, why would she do that? Because usually, you're supposed to ask for the number. But as we're talking, she just slides me her phone. And after I did this, I had a very good... Oh, and the fat chick left, so it was easier. Because I'm like, bro, like, I can't... What am I going to do about her? I can't ask her out too, bro. I can't. But thank God she left. I know that's mean, bro. That's just... Alright. So, I get the number. Or it was like her snap... I don't have Snapchat now because it's super distracting. Read The Deep Work. I have a book called The Deep Work. And I did a review on it. Don't ever get Snapchat or delete your social medias. Just use text and turn off your notifications. But again, watch that video if you want more information on it. Anyway, so I get my number and I'm like, whoa, that's crazy, why did I do this? And what I didn't realize is that the reason I'm saying all this is because this was the time that I realized that I actually have a sort of polarity, and I have a seduction sort of, I've gotten to the point to where I've become handsome enough, and I've become interesting enough that I've actually got now a sort of aura around me. My ambition, because of all the stuff I did, I've gotten to the point to where, other people, especially females, they take interest in me. And so it's not me that's chasing them. At this point, it's they that are taking interest in me now. It's because I had the physical features back then. But if I also had the knowledge, and I had like stuff from Dale Carnegie's book that we're reviewing, the How to Win Friends and Influence People, a few other books, if I had that knowledge and I was able to understand the female nature a little bit better, it would have been a much more easier process, if it makes sense. So this is why some of the stuff here, especially in this chapter, or in this part of the book, which is how you can win people to your way of thinking, is going to be very critical. Because if you master a few of the principles here, you'll be an absolute deadly force to women. You'll be able to like freaking, arm wrestle the female nature down. But anyway, so let's dive in. Number 1. Dale Carnegie explicitly says in this book how you can influence people to your way of thinking. The way you do this is by, actually this book, before I go on, super similar to The Art of Seduction by Robert Greene. Very similar. Not only to the 48 Laws of Power, but now that I've finished The Art of Seduction, very similar. Maybe I'll do the review in the future, but check it out on your own if you don't want to wait for it. Now, what Dale Carnegie says in this book is the way you influence people is opening. He says you can never win an argument. You might say, what? Nah, you can win an argument. Rustam, you preach winning arguments. You say we should have opinion. Yes, that's true. But when you get in an argument, even if you win, what Dale Carnegie says is you hurt the other person's ego. So now you basically, that saying when somebody says like, okay, it's personal, I gotta do this, it's personal. You've basically made a verbal conversation now personal. The other person, especially if it's a man, because men thrive on, being important, on having their ego, having their authority, because that's just part of our brain. That's how we survived, that's how we evolved. If men didn't have that, then we'd probably just be a bunch of but, so now that we've evolved to this time, we still have that primal, I forget the part of the brain. It's not the frontal cortex, it's the other part of your brain, the back part of the primal part of your brain. It always wants to be dominant, especially for men. When you hurt the other person's ego, you basically made enemies for a long time. And think about it, why are there liberals and conservatives? The reason there are so many liberals and conservatives in other parties, and they can never unite, or it's very rare to have some, maybe you see that YouTube video occasionally, it's like, I was a hardcore feminist and now I'm a what is the opposite of a toxically masculine person or something. But like, it's very rare that it happens, because when you argue with somebody, and you basically, oftentimes, even if you win, you still reinforce the other person's point of view. It's some psychological stuff. I don't know, maybe Dr. Huberman can explain it later in the podcast. But for now, all we know is that it's very challenging. It's almost impossible to win an argument, especially if you, let's say you make enemies. You make enemies with the person you're having an argument. Instead of having that debate, basically, that's civil, you turn it personal. The person is now always going to be looking at you a different way. He's going to be thinking about you a different way. And even when you try to get back in good terms, it's going to be harder. Now, you can use this. Very interesting. 50 Cent, the rapper, he wrote this in his book, The 50th Law of Power. Very, very interesting. He says you can use this, or though it's not, I'm sorry, it's a different book. It's Hustle Harder, Hustle Smarter by 50 Cent. It's one of the original books he wrote. He says he used that. The reason he used that is he made enemies. Because enemies that he made were high status. So he made enemies in the music industry. I think it was Jay-Z, it was Rick Ross, it was a lot of other guys. But the way he did that is he basically made enemies at the top, and those enemies, they actually pulled him to the top because he got beef with the important people when he was somewhat intermediate. And the way he's an interesting character, and I really admire his fearlessness and a lot of this stuff. But this is one of those interesting moments where he used kind of aggression and bullying, if you will, to, clash clans with the enemy. Not even the enemy, with just his fellow, musicians. And that contradiction made them enemies and it made them more popular. It made them, boom. But again, don't do that unless you really know your enemy, unless you really are at the rock bottom, because he had nothing to lose. When you have nothing to lose, oh, of course, bro, you can attack, whoever you want. You can go to like the president or something and then just, start like bombing his building. You'll probably, now I'm not saying you should do that, but if you do that, you'll be on the news, you'll be everywhere. And from nobody, you kind of become somebody, if it makes sense. Not in a good way, but you do become somebody, because now people know about you. Versus if you have some, assets. That's why a lot of people, I'm sorry, I'll keep this tangent, but a lot of people, why they don't become rich is because they're scared. It's fear. If they have a Beamer in their driveway, like, I don't know, an X5, which is, I mean, it's pretty old now, but like a good car, and you are living in a house, and you're not going to take risks as much as the person who has nothing, because you have assets, things such as cars and houses that you own that you would not want to lose. So now you're kind of forced to be in this little circle of constantly the rat race. But versus someone who doesn't have anything, he's going to be more willing to take risks. That's why young people take more risks. It's basic, common sense psychology. But just keep that in mind whenever you kind of, maybe you possess something, you have to be fearless. That's a whole nother topic. I'll definitely make a video on fearlessness. It's super critical, important. It's it's probably one of the most important traits a person can have, especially nowadays, because everybody's such a big nowadays. Another thing before I move on is never say that the other person is wrong, because that strikes a direct blow to their judgment, to their intelligence, to their pride, to their self-respect, to all the stuff. And it makes, again, the other person really despise you. Instead, what you should do is you should go from the side, sort of. Because, again, it's like a freaking sheep. It's like a goat who's like, bah, and just goes straight, like, and it rams the other goat straight on. Nah, there's a tale, in Russia, maybe it's in America. Two goats got on a bridge, and none of them wanted to give each other direction, or, like, let the other one pass. So they just kept butting, and then they all both fell in the river and died. Versus if one goat just moved, the other passed. But again, don't just go straight, go around it. And the way you can do this is, for example, I'll give you an example. If you're having an argument, pretend like you're agreeing with the person. Because again, previous law in the other video, watch the video before this in the playlist. It's, you have to let the person vent. Once the person is vented and they've told you a lot of the stuff they want to hear, now they can listen. What you should do is you should try to agree with them. The way I did this is very interesting. Perhaps it's not the best example, but it's about Tate. So we had one of my buddies, and we were discussing, he's like a hardcore liberal, bro. So he was like pretty against that stuff. So I'm like, yeah, some stuff, I'm like, I see his point, but some stuff I'm like, okay, maybe not. So we got the discussion of Tate. And the thing is, what we were talking about is we were saying how, he's like, yeah, I hate Tate. And so I was going to say that he might have some good points in terms of, staying strong and being powerful. But I didn't want to go straight on, because I'm like, okay, well, if I say that, he's probably going to be like, no. So I'm like, yes, Tate is bad. And then you know what I started doing? I started saying that things that Tate said. So I started literally saying, I'm like, he's like, yeah, Tate's a misogynist. I'm like, yep, Tate is a misogynist, because you see, women are the most beautiful things that we have in this planet, and we should really value. They have the most important roles as mothers. Men are weak, and we have to actually become strong, because then the women become strong. And we have to praise the women and be strong and stoic, because then you actually analyze your actions. So I'm saying all this stuff, and he's agreeing. And basically what I did is I just said all the stuff that I wanted him to hear that Tate said, but in reality, I went around it. Just because you said that Tate said it, he would already have a negative reaction about it. So again, stuff like that. Whenever you want to convince a person, don't say who says it, but actually start saying the actual stuff that the person said, which will make the person realize that maybe it's important stuff again. And you don't even have to name the person who said them. Like, who the hell cares who said them? If it's the right stuff, then just say it. It's not about name.